We continue with the Rambam's laws of Moshiach. We come to the concluding two laws. Having got to the point that the Moshiach is already here, and that we learned the process the Moshiach goes through and what he has to accomplish to get to that point. Right? He restores the Davidic line, rebuilds the temple, reestablishes Jewish law in its proper and full wholesome way. We established that the events that happened in the world around Mashiach's arrival are unknown, and we should wait and see how those play out. And we also established that the only distinction in the world, we just started, Alan, the only change in the world is Jewish autonomy, and that prior to Mashiach's coming, Jews are subject to foreign rule, and with the Mashiach's arrival, we have Jewish autonomy under a king from the Scion of David. That's essentially where we are. Now that the Mashiach is here, and the world is ready to serve Hashem in a proper way, not just the Jewish people, but globally, there's one more thing that Mashiach has to do to fully realize this reality of serving Hashem in the proper way. And that's what we have in Halacha Gimel of chapter 12. Gimel, B'mei HaMelech HaMashiach, at the times of the Messianic Era, when he's established his kingdom, his rulership as a king of the Davidic line, Yiskabetz Kol Yisrael, and all the Jews have already gathered in with him to Israel. So now we're really ready to serve Hashem. The temple's been built, and we're all in Israel. We have a king, we have a Sanhedrin, we have a high court, we have all these things we need. So now we're missing one element, which is to identify who is and who is not a Kohen and a Levi. That's part and parcel of serving Hashem, is knowing who's a Kohen and a Levi. So this is like the final halachic requirement, as it were, for what Mashiach has to do after he's already been established as the Mashiach, after he's gone through the process we described at the end of chapter 11. So Yisachsu Kulam al Piv, he's going to identify the lineage Beruach HaKodesh, with divine intuition, Shetanuach Alav, that will rest upon him. So now this is the first indication that something supernatural happens to the Mashiach, in terms of bringing the Jews back and inspiring them to serve Hashem, establishing the Davidic line, protecting the Jewish people militarily even. All of that didn't necessarily require any super-rational intervention. I mean, obviously there's divine intervention, but it all could, in theory, be enclosed within the system of nature. And now is the first time he introduces that there's a divine intervention. That there's going to be divine spirit that's going to rest upon him, divine intuition, and he's going to use that to identify the lineage of Jewish people. Right? He's not going to do a investigation into the records of people's history. He's doing it by divine intuition. So this is the first time he's introducing the idea that there's going to be some sort of supernatural intervention in the Messianic Era. And it's all for the full completion of halacha, that we can serve Hashem properly. Shenemar, as the verse reads, Yeshiv b'tzaref matahir, he's going to sit and going to, b'tzaref means like to purify and to discern, to come to discern who is and who is not a Kohen, a Levite, etc. As he's going to explain. First he's going to purify, he's going to establish those who are of the tribe of Levi. Levi is going to say, this person, by divine intuition, I know this person is of a Kohanic lineage, this person is of a Levite lineage, etc. And anyone who has thought to have been a Kohen or Levi and turns out not to be, they're going to be means like they'll be pushed into the category of Yisrael, of a regular, ordinary, quote-unquote Jew. And as the verse describes, he's going to select everybody into the right place until eventually he'll have the high priest with the Urim V'Tumim, with the breastplate that communicates with God. With the power of this divine intuition, he's going to strengthen those who have their lineage in terms of what tribe they are, Kohen or Levi, and he's going to inform who has that lineage. Now, in deciding and using this divine intuition to decide lineage, he's only going to decide which Jew belongs to which tribe. He'll tell you, you belong to this Shevet, and you belong to this Shevet. Why is this important in Halacha to know which Shevet you come from? Exactly. Presumably the reason is because you need to know where in the land you live. I mean, what's the difference if I'm from tribe of Judah or tribe of Binyamin, halachically speaking? So presumably the reason is so you know where in Israel I should live. But he's not going to say of somebody who is presumed to be a kosher Jew, mamzer, this is an illegitimate, a person of illegitimate birth. Eved, and this one's a great grandson of a slave. Shadinu, because the law is a family that over generations has been intermarried, interconnected with the Jewish people, are presumed to be Jewish, and he's not going to undo that. Meaning to say, even though the technical lineage is such this person is of an illegitimate birth or this person is a slave, nonetheless, considering that the halacha says that at this point this person has been completely integrated into the Jewish people, he is now a full-on Jew. So the only thing the Moshiach is going to use his divine intuition for is to identify which tribe you belong to, Kohen, Levi, and then which of the other 12 tribes you belong to, and that way you'll know, do you serve in the temple, do you not serve in the temple, how do you serve in the temple, which part of Israel you should live in, and so on. Now, in the final two halachas, sorry?
I thought the previous halacha it said that, I forget when you mentioned that Moshiach was not going to
Eliyahu Hanavi.
That's the prophet.
Eliyahu Hanavi, the prophet which precedes Moshiach's coming, is not going to do this. He's just going to be there to inspire the Jewish people to head in the right direction, to serve Hashem properly, to prepare them for this era. Mashiach himself, after having established himself as Mashiach, and after having reestablished the kingdom of David and the Davidic line and the temple and all the rest of it, then he's going to identify which Jew belongs to which tribe, and that way we can truly serve Hashem properly.
The only thing I can't figure out is, besides the wings of an eagle, how are we going to get to Israel?
Airplanes. Okay, next to halachas, we're going to get to the culminating words on the Messianic era. One way to look at it is that he's kind of just, giving closing remarks. But more precisely, he's actually describing the ultimate stage or the next stage in Mashiach's coming. And this idea of stages within the Mashiach's coming is going to answer the question you asked yesterday about what happened to all the miracles described in the Torah, especially the resurrection of the dead, not described here. Right? One of the 13 principles of faith that Rambam mentions in his other book, one of his other books, his book of commentary on the Mishnah and Sanhedrin, he describes one of the 13 principles of faith is the resurrection. And here he makes the mention of it and just says that Mashiach is not going to change anything in the world. Right? In fact, this fact that the Rambam left out any description of the resurrection is a matter of great controversy when the book was first published. To the point that he wrote a whole entire letter, Gereth Tchis HaMesim, a famous letter, where he responds to critics who thought that he didn't believe in the resurrection. He doesn't make it exactly clear of how to learn this, but what emerges is that there is stages in the Messianic era. And I hope we already see that there are, even before we get to the issue of Tchis HaMesim, we already see that there are stages. There's the stage of Mashiach being presumed Mashiach, when he's first inspiring the Jewish people. Then there's the stage when he rebuilds the temple. Then there's the stage when he is certainly Mashiach, having rebuilt the temple and having brought all the people back to Israel. And then there's the stage when he has to inspire the whole entire world to serve Mashiach, to serve Hashem. Then there's the stage when he has to use divine intuition to decide who is a Kohen, who's a Levi, and which tribe everybody belongs to. These are stages. And then there's the final stage, or the next stage I should say, is what we're going to describe in the next two halachas, the next stage. And then after that stage that we're going to describe in the next two halachas, there's the stage when the miracle happens. And then there's another stage in the Rambam is called Elam Haba. So we still have essentially 3 more stages to identify.
So those final stages are not to determine whether or not this individual is Moshiach,
It's all after the Messianic Era.
which doesn't require miracles.
That's correct.
Maybe the post elements.
That's correct. Exactly. So the elements that bring Mashiach, that's correct.
Definition of Moshiach.
That's correct. So the definition of what Mashiach has to do is a halachic definition. Halacha lives in the world of nature. So what he has to do in the world of nature, we laid out in the world of halacha. Then once Mashiach comes, once he's been established halachically, then there are things Hashem does. First and foremost, what Hashem does is gives him divine intuition so he can decide who is from which tribe, who is a Kohen, who's a Levi, who's from which tribe. And then, as we're going to see in a moment, Hashem brings us to a higher level of consciousness, divine consciousness. The next stage, but these are things Hashem does, not the halachic requirements of Mashiach. And then there are other stages after the Messianic Era has already begun. It's progression.
Slowly introducing Hashem
That's
into the
That's correct. We're slowly bringing Hashem's truth into the world. First in the natural means to the farthest we can go, using nature and halacha, and then even beyond that, as Hashem intervenes and brings this higher world order, this higher consciousness to the world. But the Rambam is going to include his halacha with the stage of divine consciousness. What happens after that, the Rambam does not include in his book of halacha, and we'll describe why momentarily. So let's see.
What happens to the people who don't go to Israel?
It doesn't say, it says everybody's going to go.
Because didn't the Rebbe say one time that we're going to still be dispersed?
I don't know. We'll leave that out for a moment. Good question, but we'll leave that out for a second. All right, so let's see. It says the Rambam in the second to last halacha. The prophets and the sages who so desired for Mashiach's coming, the reason was not because they wanted to rule the world, and not so that they should literally go down into the non-Jews, meaning to take revenge, and not so that the whole world shall exalt him, and not so that they should eat, drink, and be merry. Right? This is was the prevalent vision of what Moshiach is, and sometimes today that's what it is also. We're finally going to get back at all these people who oppressed us. They're finally going to recognize us for who we are. We'll finally be rid of all this annoying stuff. We can just sit and have a party and have a good time. That's the way often people think of as this utopian, fantastical Messianic era. And says the Rambam, it's not what they wanted. It might be true that all these things are going to happen. It's true that Hashem is going to cast judgment on the nations who oppressed us, and it's true that they are going to finally recognize who we are, and it's true that all these things are true, and it's true we're going to have a good time, and it's true we're going to be able to eat and drink. That's not what we wanted. That's not why the prophets wanted it, even if it's true that it might happen. Ella, rather, what did they want Moshiach for? So that all of the distractions which stopped them from serving Hashem and from learning Torah till now are gone. Even the reason why they want the oppression to be gone is so that they can serve Hashem. Removal of oppression in and of itself is not a goal. Right? The negation of a negative state of living is not a goal. This is true collectively when we speak internationally. Moshiach's coming is also true privately. What's my goal in life? To get rid of all those people or all those things that bother me? Okay, so now all those things are not bothering you. Now what? Right? Your goal in life cannot be a negative goal to get rid of that which bothers you. It's got to be a positive goal. I want to accomplish something. I want to go somewhere. And the same thing is true collectively with Moshiach's coming. The goal is not to rid ourselves of all the things that have annoyed us as Jewish people. That's not the ultimate goal. The goal is we want to have a connection to Hashem. We want to serve Hashem in the proper way. It so happens there are things that are distracting us from serving Hashem. Okay, so we want to get rid of those. But that in and of itself is not the objective. Right? The objective of Jewish observance and the objective of all of Jewish history is not just the avoidance of pain, the avoidance of that which distracts us, but there's a positive, what we want. To be freed so we can study Torah and enjoy Hashem's wisdom. And nothing to annoy them or to distract them or to pull them away from their studies. And now what do they want that for? Now here it makes reference to the final stage. What do they want to serve Hashem for in the time of Mashiach's coming? So that they should be able to merit to the world to come. Which means the world to come is sometime after Moshiach.
Or it could be the world after that.
Let's explain in a moment. As explained in Hilchos Tshuva. So the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva is in some ways more lengthy than he is over here in the laws of Moshiach. But essentially in the Rambam's view it's like this. It's a big machlokes between the Rambam and the Ramban. And the essential machlokes is as follows. Where's the ultimate destination? In the Rambam, the ultimate destination is souls without bodies. The body in and of itself, in Rambam's view, is somewhat of a distraction because it holds you back from fully comprehending. Our minds and that which we comprehend are attached to the experiences of our body.
That's the Rambam's view?
Rambam's view.
It seems contradictory since he wrote a whole book on physical halacha.
Yes, but in the Rambam's view, all of halacha is to help you transcend the trappings of the physical body so that your mind can appreciate divinity in its more abstract truth. And therefore the ultimate destination is a soul without a body, a sichlium nivdalium, abstract conceptual beings that conceptualize godliness without the attachments of the body's version of reality. Right? When you think of everything we think of, it comes through the physical body. We can't escape it. Just to give you an example. When you think of something that is great. Great. Now great is a concept. It's a concept. But yet when you close your eyes and think of great, your body and your mind cannot control itself but think of something physically big. Even though you know we're not talking about physical bigness because the great is a concept. Right? You say this person's intelligence is higher than that person's intelligence. If you close your eyes and visualize it, you're thinking of somebody physically higher than somebody else. You know we're not talking about physical height, you know we're talking about conceptual height. But still our bodies are trapped in that way of thinking because we're physical beings, so our mind is trapped in that way of thinking.
Also determining what is great is also a physical...
That's correct. We use physical metrics for all of this stuff, even though we know we're talking about abstraction. Because that's the way it is. Our minds are trapped in our bodies. And therefore we see the world through our bodies. And therefore from the Rambam's perspective, this is a consistency throughout the Rambam in his Shemona Prakim, in his Moreh Nevuchim, in his book of Halacha. That the ultimate is to be a soul without a body, and that way you have complete, full, abstract understanding of divine without the trappings of the way the body views things. Right? Another example, you say the hand of Hashem. We know it's not a physical hand. But if you close your eyes and imagine it, you almost can't control yourself but imagining a physical hand. Because you have no other way of considering things other than the way the physical body considers things. And then finally, after the Messianic Era, right, after Hashem brings us to this point where we're complete, full halachic service of Hashem, because there's no distractions, the temple's rebuilt, we have the Karbonis, we have the Sanhedrin, we have all the things we need to serve Hashem in the full proper way. Now what are we going to ultimately get to? This Olam Haba, this world of souls without bodies. This is the Rambam's view. Rambam's view. Ramban, on the other hand, is not of that view, and the Ramban says that the ultimate destination is souls in bodies. Now what about the fact that our bodies are a limitation on fully comprehending the divine? For this, Chassidus explains that is exactly the purpose. The point is not we escape the physicality to discover Hashem. That existed before our world. Angels have that, and our soul before getting into the body also had that. So we didn't come down to the body to then escape the body so we can have abstract understanding of God. We already had that before the soul came to the body. What's the ultimate purpose? The ultimate purpose is that paradoxically, even the body itself is going to perceive godliness. Now how that happens, I don't know until it happens. But this is the way Chassidus explains it. That's what we say. That's what we mean when we say we're making a home for Hashem in the physical world. That even within the physicality, heaven on earth, even within our physical bodies, we will be able to perceive the divine without any obstruction. Right now, the way we perceive the divine is obstructed by the fact that we envision everything through the physical terms of our physical body. But when Moshiach comes, notwithstanding the fact that we'll have a physical body, we'll still be able to perceive the truth of the divine, and we'll be able to see it within the physicality. It's the ultimate paradox, and it's the ultimate truth of the essence of Hashem, that even in a place of physicality, He is still one. The fact that Hashem is one in a world of spirituality where there is no division of the physical, okay, Hashem is one. The true revelation of God's oneness is that even in a world of division of our physical world, where I'm a body here, you're a body there, Australia is down here, and Canada's here, where it's a world of division. Yet in that division we'll perceive God's oneness. In the physicality and through the physicality. Now you understand what it means when we say, on that day, Hashem echad, God will be one, Ushmai echad, and His name will be one. 1 second, God is not one and His name is not one now? So what does this mean when Moshiach comes? Then God's going to be one and then His name is going to be one? Now we understand. God is one. But God's name is one means, a name is the way somebody else refers to you. A name is a way of you interacting with otherness. So when we say Shemoi, when we say Hashem's name, it's Hashem as He interacts with otherness. He interacts with creating our world. Melech Shemoi Nikra Aleim. The name of the king is called upon the people. So the name of Hashem is a reference to godliness as He is invested in creation to create otherness. And that's what's referred to as a name. And when Mashiach comes, even Shemoi Echad, even His name will be one. Even in this reality of division, even in this reality of creation, which seems to be distant and separate from Hashem, even there will reveal the oneness of Hashem. This is the Rambam / Chassidus version of what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. Not the ultimate destination is souls out body, but the ultimate destination is souls in bodies and experiencing the oneness of Hashem even through the body. So there you have this machlokes, this dispute as to what the ultimate destination is, what the world to come post the Messianic era looks like. Everybody agrees the Messianic era is a natural phenomenon in which the world naturally evolves to the point of serving Hashem completely. But what happens after that? So in Rambam's view, the ultimate is souls without bodies, abstract understanding of godliness. Ramban's view is souls in bodies and appreciating the truth of Hashem even whilst in the body. But before we get to that stage, there's still more. Before we get to that ultimate stage, because we still haven't mentioned the resurrection yet. Or it's in stages, it's a different story. That I would say is part of the things that Rambam said. We don't know what's going to happen until it happens. Right? I know what I'm saying. Right? Okay. But before we get to that, we have to cover this issue of next halacha, and then we'll cover the issue of. Yeah. Let's learn the next halacha before we get to the issue of the resurrection. Sorry.
Right now we have two alternatives, but Hashem can come up with a third.
So there is a discussion about it being a hybrid between the two. But let's see this final halacha, because this is the quintessential halacha of all halachas, with regard to Mashiach at least. V'oisi at that time, when Mashiach comes, lo yeshem le'rav, there will be no hunger, v'le milchama, no war, v'le kinna v'sachas, no jealousy, no strife. Sha'tova to mishbas harbe, all the good will be abundantly available. V'chol madanim, and all delicacies mitzuyin ka'afar will be found as readily available as the dust of the earth. Now, I hope you're thinking, this is a radical change from the world. Didn't you just say that nothing in the world is going to change? And now you're saying, no hunger, no sickness, no war. It's a radical change from history. Right? So first of all, sorry? No, sorry, I didn't mention no sickness, you're right. But no war, no hunger, and no strife. So that's a radical change. So one thing is the change in psychology of people rather than change of nature. That's one issue. But more, I would say, this lends itself to what we described in an earlier class, that the natural world evolves towards a miraculous state of being. So I know that. I'm just reading this. To illustrate. We say no hunger. So for thousands of years, hunger was a default. And today, hunger is almost eradicated. Almost eliminated. In most places of the world, hunger is not an issue. In fact, in North America, obesity is an issue. That's an unheard of phenomenon in history. Obesity being an issue. The default was hunger. Right? And even in countries and in continents where there is an issue of hunger, say in Africa, we're getting very close to ending it. I don't mean, maybe not in the next month or 2 months, but in the big scheme of things, we're very close to it. It's within a couple of years. It's only a question of time before we discover some manner in which we can preserve the shelf life of crops, put it onto a boat and ship it off to Africa. There actually already is something in the works. There's already a spray developed. You can Google this. There's a spray, I think it was developed in Israel, where you spray food and it extends the shelf life of this food for months. which means all the corn that they're burning in America because it's extra, they can spray it, put it onto a carton, send it to Africa, and boom, you've ended hunger. They're testing these things now, but it's not something that's out of our world view. In other words, 100 years ago, you told someone we're going to end hunger, they'll laugh at you. Today, you tell someone we're ending hunger, no, this is a goal of humanity, a visible goal of humanity. So this idea that the goodness is available everywhere is already happening. With a click of a button, you have basically everything you want delivered to your door for relatively cheap. And it's just going to become more and more as AI gets better, like artificial intelligence and robots get better and better. Things we want are going to be more readily available.
Who's about this?
This is the Rambam speaking about describing the Messianic Era. And although on the surface it might seem like a radical change from the natural world, as we've demonstrated, it's the natural progression to a radical state of being. It's the natural progression to a miraculous era. In the same way we described it a couple of classes ago with respect to the health of people being radically better than it was 100 years ago. The state of world affairs is radically better than it was 100 years ago. We think of a lot of wars going on because of the news, but relatively speaking, the number of deaths by wars dropped drastically. If you're taking a scale of thousands of years, not the scale of 50 years, the scale of thousands of years, it's dropped drastically. People protest in the streets not because they want to go to war like they used to. They protest in the streets because they want peace. Whether the protest is corrupt or not corrupt is not the point. But the notion that the world is heading in a direction where peace is a virtue is in of itself radical departure from the way it was 100 and something years ago, where the hero was the person who killed the most people in battle. And today the hero is the Nobel Peace Prize. Go tell someone in 1,000 years ago that we're going to be giving prizes to people who made peace. Be like, what? You give prize to someone who wins the battle, who wins the war. Right? So it's a radical change from history, that's true, but it's gone through a natural progression.
Even Abraham couldn't do that.
Sorry?
Even Abraham couldn't do that.
Yeah. And then he explains, so what are we going to be doing if everything is available? No war, no jealousy, no hunger. Today, that's what we're busy dealing with. Throughout all of history, we're spending most of our time trying to feed ourselves, trying to deal with jealousies, dealing with war. So now that that's all gone, what are we doing? The occupation of the entire world, not just Jewish people, but all the world, will be nothing other than the pursuit of the knowledge of God alone. And that's also something that's already happening. Today, the idea of people pursuing knowledge for no other reason but for the sake of pursuing knowledge is so prevalent. People spend hours on the internet learning in a manner that you couldn't do 100 years ago. You just could not do it. You couldn't do it 50 years ago. Not just because people didn't have time, because it wasn't even available. And today it's available for everybody. So this idea of the world going to a place where people are pursuing knowledge is very much, that's the modern culture. Everybody's listening to podcasts, everybody's learning things online, and you used to go to university and that was the end of your learning, and now people are learning later. Why not? So we're
The Rambam is divinely inspired.
absolutely.
He had to be,
Absolutely.
because you can never come up with something.
Absolutely.
Well, this is actually based on Suki. It's not,
He was still divinely inspired.
of course, there's nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
All what he's saying is based on
Yeah. But nonetheless, the Rambam was certainly his writing was divinely inspired. Anyway. And therefore, so the world's getting to a place where we're pursuing knowledge, and specifically the ultimate knowledge of Hashem Himself. And therefore, therefore the Jewish people will be great sages. And we will know secret and hidden matters. Talking about Chassidus here. Chassidus brings Kabbalistic ideas to the masses in a way that was locked from the masses, and now it's available to be understood. Not just a question of knowing what it says, but understanding what it says. And comprehend the knowledge of the Creator, to the best that man is capable of doing it. As the verse reads, the world will be filled with knowledge of God, as the ocean covers the seabed. And this is the final halacha. As if to say, the ultimate destination of all of serving Hashem is to get full and complete divine consciousness. Individually, collectively for the Jewish people, and essentially for the entire world. So if we look at it now, we have these stages like this. We have the stage before Mashiach's coming, where he's presumed Mashiach because he began the work. Then we have the point where he's successful and he becomes certainly Mashiach. Then we have the stage in which God grants him divine intuition so he can discern who's going to be Kohen, Levi, and who's going to be from which tribe. Sometime at this point, the world comes to a point where there is no more hunger, there's no more strife, there's no more any of that stuff. Right? Because until now, there could still be hunger in the world. Right? There could still be jealousy in the world. But then there's another stage in which all that stuff is gone, because world consciousness has been elevated. And we've come to the point where we fully comprehend godliness to the absolute max that a human being can, and the world is busy with the pursuit of divine knowledge, and it's prevalent and available like the water covers the seabed. That's the next stage we're describing. But then the Rambam hints to a stage that comes later in the Rambam's view, which is souls without bodies, what he refers to as Olam Haba, the world to come. But we're missing one more stage, and that's the stage of the resurrection. So after the stage of full divine consciousness comes the stage of the miraculous. Not Moshiach doing the miracle, because he's a halachic entity that has to do things halachically in the natural order. But there's divine intervention here. The resurrection of the dead, and all of the miracles described in the verses. And the question becomes, why didn't I mention it? That's the big question. There's literally pages of commentary on this discussion. But essentially, this is the way the Rabbi understands it, is that here we're looking at a book of Halacha. And when we look at a book of Halacha, what do we have to discuss? What am I required to do? What are human beings and Jews required to do? And that's what he's described. What God's required to do, that's not something he has to describe in a book of Halacha. It's what God has to do. But yet, within Halacha, especially as we discussed before, the Rambam is one of the first people to halachically define theology. He also includes matters of theology, not just the questions of what I have to do. For example, he describes here the Messianic Era of divine consciousness. What do I have to do for that? Nothing. The world's going to get to a point where there's no more jealousy, and I'll be able to study Torah all day long. What does that have to do with me? My halachic requirements is something God does, getting rid of jealousy, getting rid of hunger, getting rid of war. And yet he still describes them in the book of Halacha. Why is that? Because in the book of Halacha, when he describes theology and philosophy, it's all theology and philosophy that stem from Halacha, or defined by Halacha. Let's putting it this way. This state of being divine consciousness throughout the world and for the Jewish people is the culmination of all of our halachic behavior. The resurrection of the dead and the miracles is God's reward on His terms. It's not the culmination of my service of Hashem. The culmination of my service of Hashem is that God willing will get to a point where we're going to have full divine consciousness, because that's what I'm fighting for in my halacha. That's what I'm working for in my service of Hashem.
Right, and that's not miraculous. That's just getting a higher level of divine consciousness.
That's correct. But through natural progression, yes. But it's, even though it's describing something God's bringing us to, a world of no hunger, that's something God's doing, right? Through nature, perhaps, that's what we're suggesting, but it's still something that God does. But that state of being is the ultimate goal of halacha itself. Resurrection of the dead is not the goal of halacha. Resurrection of the dead is not the goal of our service of Hashem. It's what Hashem does, because He wants to reward those people who worked so hard for the Messianic Era. He's going to bring them back so that they can appreciate it and enjoy it also. But it's not where I'm going in my service of Hashem. Where am I going in my service of Hashem? To ultimate full divine consciousness.
I don't think Hashem gives us, or no jealousy is not something.
Yeah. But no hunger and no war, and the fact that goods have to be available everywhere, right? Tov mishpeyas harba, all good and all delicacies are available in abundance. Even if we're going to accept, and it seems to be the case, that it's a question of the world naturally progressing to that point, but it's clearly something Hashem has to get done. In the natural means, perhaps, but something Hashem does. The point I'm making here is that this state of being is the destination of our service of Hashem. And that's why it's described in the book of Halacha. Whereas miracles that Hashem does, it's true, it's real, it's going to happen, but it's not the culmination of my service of Hashem. Where does my service of Hashem culminate? My service of Hashem culminates in the full divine consciousness. And then after that, Hashem is going to provide all these wonderful miracles. But that's not the culmination of my service of Hashem. That's somewhat clear? So in conclusion, if we all thought about Moshiach not as some mythical, fantastical reality, but rather as two things which are one. Number one, it's the time in which we can properly serve Hashem. Properly serve Hashem because A, there's not going to be any distractions, and B, because we're going to have the restored, all the things in Halacha we lost are going to be restored. And then the other side of the coin of that is, it's the destination of where we are going. Where are we headed? What are we doing all this for? Where are we going? Right? Judaism is a very forward-thinking, destination-oriented religion. Unlike what people think it's a tradition-based religion. Of course it's based on tradition because we have traditions from Moshiach Era, but it's not a religion that's here to uphold a tradition. That's not our objective. It's a forward-thinking religion. It's a faith that's looking at the future and saying, where are we going? And all the thousands of years of Jews serving Hashem have meant something. It led somewhere. Even Jewish suffering, as we saw before, from his description of what JC accomplished and what Muhammad accomplished, even though they caused all kinds of problems to the Jewish people, nonetheless, it's all part and parcel of the journey leading towards the one singular destination, which is united divine consciousness. And therefore, the Messianic Era is not something unrelated to what I'm doing every day. It's the ultimate goal of everything I'm doing every day. It's where we're working towards. It's where we're headed. And every Jew who lived, who lives, and will live is part and parcel of creating that reality and heading in that direction, that destination. May we see this fulfillment, God willing, without delay. Mitzvah tomorrow we'll get back to Tractate Yuma.